Just when it looks like the Pacers have some momentum, they drop a game to a team they have a better record than. Again, they get crushed in Chicago by 26. They scored their fewest points of the season. They can't get in the paint. What went wrong for the Pacers? And let's do standings watch. It's all coming today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Thursday, y'all, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today we are in a room, I don't know what to call this, closet thing in the United Center, and we have to talk about Pacers Bulls that just wrapped up in this building about 30 minutes ago. And the Pacers got thumped 125-99. One of their worst losses of the season on the scoreboard and one of their actual number one worst loss in terms of points. Only time this season the Pacers have been held under 100. How did the Bulls do it? What went wrong? Why can't the Pacers get any consistency after some good wins? We'll try to cut into all of that today. And this one, the story of it is what I led with. The offense, 99 points. For the top five Indiana Pacers offense in this game. This was what I was tracking the whole fourth quarter, and they did bring in some of the reserves to end the game, so perhaps they could have exceeded it, although the reserves did pretty well scoring. First time under 100 for the Pacers all season. Their previous low scoring was 101, so this was their lowest scoring game of the season. Bulls have a good defense, but not a defense that you'd expect to completely neutralize a good offense like the Pacers. And it shows up in just about every stat. Pacers shot 40% from the field in this game. They only made 34 shots in total. They made 31% of their threes. They were wobbly at the foul line. They had 13 turnovers. But in general, to me, a couple things stand out about what the Bulls did and they have been able to do. Because if you look back at another stat that we'll reference here, the Bulls did this to the Pacers before, as the game's slower paced, right? It's not that the Pacers, were like they shot 40%, that's bad. But in general, they should have been able to get to 100 points with 85 shot attempts and 23 free throws. But those are lower numbers combined than usual for the Pacers. They had fewer chances to score in this game, and they had 12 offensive rebounds because it was a slower paced game. Why was it slower for them? They couldn't get into their offenses quick, and they weren't getting in transition because of their defense. That's thing number one, is the style the Pacers want to play, especially recently with their defense being a little bit better, is get some stops, get out in transition, get into their early offense, and that wasn't there. The defense to offense part of this game completely vanished for the Pacers, who had 11 fast break points in total. The Bulls had almost an equal amount, and it's not baked into their identity, and they could not get enough stops at all. Bulls shot 50% from the field, 44.4% from deep, and only had 7 turnovers. So you can't get out and run. So start right off the bat. Stylistically, the Pacers are in a hole. The only way you're going to overcome that is shooting well or defending well. They did neither of those things. And so all of a sudden, they're already at an offensive disadvantage, already on the back foot. They can't play their game. They can't get out and run, and they can't get into early offense. The other thing the Bulls do well as a team is they really try to keep their opponents out of the paint, right? They lead the league in opponent points per game in the paint. That stat took longer to say than I expected, at about 45. And tonight, the Pacers only mustered 38 points in the paint. The Bulls had 60. So a dominant performance from the Bulls. If you remember a couple weeks ago, the Pacers scored over 80 and held the Nets to 42 in the same game. And they crushed the Nets despite not shooting that well because they dominated the paint. Dominating the paint can make a team dominate an entire game. And the Pacers specifically, they play what they call paint to great, right? They want to get in the paint and make it work from there. Scoring, passing, finding something, whatever. So they want to do that. They could not in this game. And I have a couple theories as to why. And one of these is a general thing from this game. One is it's just, again, given that the Bulls allow the fewest in the league, part of how the Bulls play, right? And they have good enough perimeter defenders up and down the roster. Kobe White isn't a great defender, but he's shifty and quick and has long arms. Torrey Craig can defend. Javon Carter is pesky and defend. And, of course, Ayo Dosunmu and Alex Caruso are fantastic, near the tops of the league in this area of, being really tough in a perimeter defense one-on-one situation. So that already makes it hard. They have enough guys to throw at the Pacers ball handlers to keep things difficult for the Pacers to play the way they want. And for one of the Pacers' best stretches of this game, their way to combat that was 3 guards. They played Nembhard, McConnell, and Haliburton all together for a couple minutes and won those minutes because they had more ball handling on the floor, and they were able to defend well enough with Nembhard guarding DeRozan, and they were both kind of the wings, the threes, whatever, it doesn't matter. And that kind of worked for a little bit. The Bulls, there was some shifting and subs right after, but that was, kind of proof of concept to me that if the Pacers could get enough ball handling on the floor to get into the paint, things would go well, but they weren't able to. And so I kind of wondered throughout the game if there would be a way to get Pascal Siakam going toward the rim. And he took 11 free throws. They tried, 7 shots on his way to 14 points. He was 2 for 7 from the field. The Bulls did well to neutralize him. I think he's the guy that if this game happens again, would be the key of the Pacers getting out of that, is him trying to get into the paint in other ways than just drives, because the Pacers didn't have it going to the basket in this game. The other thing the Bulls do stylistically, Andrew Nembhard was describing this to us after the game, but they keep their big up pretty high on pick and rolls, so you can't just immediately see some space right in front of you, and then they have a guy in the gap, making it so you can't just try to go around the big, and the skip pass is hard when there's someone in the gap. Like, it's very natural to just want to give it up. And so that means there's going to be some quick, pass to the wing, a little bit open shots because they're not helping, but a little farther away from their man, one pass away. But the Pacers didn't shoot well in this game, 13 for 42 from deep. And so it's really hard to combat that without the shooting. So the drives weren't there, and the Pacers want to play as a drive-heavy team, and they couldn't get it done. The reason I keep saying this is a Bulls thing, beyond the fact that they lead the league in paint points allowed, is the Pacers have been held under 40 points in the paint 4 times this season. 4 times. 2 of them were against the Bulls. One was tonight, obviously. The other one was December 28th against the Bulls, and they won that game. That was their only time under 40 this season in points to paint that they won. The other 2 were in Memphis just before Christmas, and in Portland in that game that Siakam and Haliburton were playing together for the very first time of the season. The other thing about this is the Pacers are 2, and I should be doing math faster than in my head. They're 2 and 5 when scoring 40 or less points in the paint. And then you get up to 44, and they're a little better there. But they're 2 and 5 when they score 40 or less points in the paint. In those 2 wins, one was the Bulls game I just mentioned right after Christmas, and one was the Bucks game they had in early November, the first Bucks game they played the season in the in-season tournament group stage. Or that might not have been an in-season tournament game, but they were on that court. Here's what they did in those games. They couldn't get into the paint against the Bucks. But you know why they won that game? Because they had 23s. They had 23s in that game. They didn't turn it over very much. So they were able to keep up offensively because they were on fire with the jumpers. If a team's going to keep you out of the paint, you can shoot over them. Pacers earlier in the season were a much better shooting team. You know how they beat the Bulls just after Christmas when they couldn't get into the paint? They drilled their threes. They made 19 that night out of 42, and the Bulls did not shoot well from 3. The Bulls did shoot well from 3 this time, and the Pacers only had 9 turnovers that first game. So if you're going to play a team that is trying to keep you out of the paint, the natural reaction or the natural way to beat that is to shoot over them. And the Pacers were, for those 2 games specifically, in a time of the season where they were a good jump shooting team. They were not in this game. And so the second factor to combat what the Bulls are doing wasn't there. So that defined the game to me. The Pacers needed to find a way to get into the paint and play from there, whether that's even just getting a floater off, getting to the basket, spraying it out to a shooter, whatever, but they couldn't do it, right? That's why their assist numbers were even, only at 25. That's why their points to paint numbers were so low. That's why they just didn't look very good offensively. They were missing a lot. They couldn't finish even when they got down there. Credit to Andre Drummond. I thought Andre Drummond had a really good game in this one. And they couldn't hit the jumpers to actually punish and make the Bulls adjust and try to come out a little farther. And that's how you lose a game like this. Now, granted, offense was not the only thing they did wrong. But to me, the reason the Pacers scored 99 and had their worst offensive game of the season is because they couldn't get to the paint like they wanted. They couldn't shoot threes to combat that. And that made it too difficult for them to keep up with just their defense, right? 12 offensive rebounds, pretty good. 13 turnovers, maybe a hair too much, but not untenable. And they weren't even close. They were not even close for much of this game because their offense was just so disjointed. They could never go on runs. They had to use newer-ish or gimmickier-ish lineups to get into the game. And as soon as the Bulls took the lead late in the first quarter, they never gave it back. Wire-to-wire dominance for the Bulls, who are under 500. Pacers just beat the Clippers and the Warriors on the road and then lose this game. That's their season. Why? Why does this keep happening? Well, I have a theory about this one specifically that's a little different than some of their other crummy losses. And then we'll get to standings watch while we also have other important things to discuss from this game. Before we get to any of that, though, We've got to talk about Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Well, our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level, like the 2024 Nissan Rogue. It's perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-ins are your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect mid-size crossover for your next adventure. There's also the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder with room for up to 8 expansive cargo capacity and advanced available 4x4 capabilities with 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing when adventure calls. The Pathfinder's there to answer. And don't forget the Nissan Armada. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop now at nissanusa.com. Let's also quickly talk about Amazon and their Fire TV. Fire TV, your destination for sports. How about that? From live games to highlights to in-depth analysis, you can get it all on Fire TV, which offers an amazing viewing experience with smart TVs as well as Fire Stick TV. I have one of those. You can plug right into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes us at Locked On. You can watch me on there. Most big pro sports leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive in to all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should trust me on this to learn more. Visit amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. And we are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day for your second listen. Check out Locked On Bulls. Hear how the Bulls won this game. Handily won this game to break their losing streak. Bulls now at 35 wins, so 6 behind the Pacers. Pacers probably still have no chance of falling to 9, but they keep losing chances to beat the Bulls and clinch the tiebreaker over the Bulls and make it just no conversation, not even worth talking about. Currently, it's a 5.5 game gap, and the Pacers have 8 games left. The peak wins for the Bulls is 44. It looks exceedingly likely, and it would have looked more likely had the Pacers won this one, and they'd have been 1 win away. But now they're at least 3 wins away. We'll see. Plenty more to come on the standings and the tiebreakers and all that. 125-99, the final of this game. Look, no one wants to hear this, and I know that fans are going to think an eye roll when I say what I'm about to say. The Pacers just played their 5th road game in 8 days, their 3rd road game in 4 nights, and they traveled from the West Coast to the East. I literally read an article about West Coast to East Coast travel before this podcast to make sure I'm not crazy that it's a thing that can be challenging. It's usually just the first game where you transport time zones that's more difficult, right? Like if you're in one for a while, even if you're on the road, you can get acclimated to it in your body. And when you're performing does whatever. Pacers came from LA to Chicago. That's a 3-hour difference. That's not why they lost. They played awful, but it is hard to do that, right? Every team has talked about the difficulties of that, and you could see the tired legs for the Pacers that is baked into their poor driving numbers. It's also baked into their poor defense. Now, not an excuse. They need to be winning games like this. They absolutely need to be. In fact, I would just say it's a negative that they weren't able to get over that in a standings race against a team that's inferior to them. But that is part of the game. That is certainly part of what happened tonight. And they looked rough. They looked really rough. Lowest scoring first half of the season for the Pacers. Lowest scoring half in total with 43. Their third quarter looked good, and then their fourth quarter looked atrocious. They just had so many moments in this game where they didn't look like the same team. I mean, they were just so wobbly. They couldn't score. I mean, their only starter who shot better than 40% was Andrew Nembhard. In fact, Andrew Nembhard was probably, to me, the best Pacer in this game. It's not even really close. 18 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, decent defense on DeRozan. They played him a lot, including with the second unit, including at the 3 to get more ball handling out there because he was playing so well in part. McConnell was okay. Haliburton got going once for like 2 possessions in a row, but he was really off. Siakam and Haliburton combined 6 for 22. If the Stars aren't winning, that's kind of, I was just reading this about the Clippers. I forget who said it, but there's a lot of conversation you can have about, the role players and their value to a team. And certainly for the Pacers, they've been excellent of late and a big part of their success. But, sometimes during these down stretches, the conversation is just about the stars, and neither Haliburton nor Siakam were nearly even close to the level they've been of late in this game. Even though their minutes, the Pacers played close to the Bulls, they specifically did not live up to their standards statistically at all. 6 for 22 speaks for itself. Defense needed to be better for the Pacers too. 125 is a lot against a Bulls team that's not a particularly threatening scoring team. They did better under Rosen, 27 this time instead of 46. He made half his shots. The guys that were really difficult for the Pacers in this game, Ayo Dosunmu, who every time he got open, it seemed like he made something. He just took space in front of him, was handling to the sides pretty well, hitting in the mid-range. He looked really threatening. He's been a lot better this season, but shouldn't be this difficult. And Caruso, again, with 12 points. They've had a lot of trouble with him. But the guy that really changed the game to me a lot was Andre Drummond. Andre Drummond just kicked the Pacers' behinds in his 17 and a half minutes. Plus 23, Andre Drummond was. That's the second highest on the Bulls behind Javonte Green, who was in at the right times. But Drummond was awesome. He was a beast on the boards. He battled on the other end. His defense was really good. He had 3 steals. I believe that was those quasi half-block half steals. 14 points. He made 4 free throws. He is kind of the embodiment of, and the Pacers are not playing strong enough on the glass, whether that was Jalen Smith or Isaiah Jackson or Myles Turner, who all had some stints against Drummond. That was the perfect way to define the Pacers just not having it in this game. And again, this is a bad thing. I'm calling them out for this, not saying it's an excuse. Andre Drummond just punking the other centers, right? Myles Turner, only 4 boards in this game. He only played 24 minutes. Jalen Smith, only 4 boards in this game in his 12 minutes. He had a rough night. And Isaiah Jackson, who played in garbage time, he had 6 boards and had some effort. He only played 8 minutes. But Drummond just kicked all their butts. Pacers defense was not good enough in this game, and they lose again. And their inconsistencies remain. And I really don't know what to make of it. That they can be so up for, 145 points on Sunday, 133 the other night. They beat Golden State. They beat the Clippers. Clippers won 2 nights later. It's not like they're playing awful. They're not playing good, but they're not playing awful. And then they just look atrocious against the Bulls. Again, they lost. They didn't look atrocious in their first loss to the Bulls, but it's just kind of what this team is. They really struggled to just put it all together for a stretch. I think they had that 1 6-game winning streak now in late December into early January. I think they won 9 out of 10 in that run from right after Christmas until they won those first 2 games without Haliburton. That was a key stretch of their season, really, to do so well there with their schedule getting difficult. But they just really struggled to, be able to be ready to go against games like this. Now, here's what I'll say about this game that is different. Like I just said about the tired legs. I predicted the Pacers would lose this game despite on my pre-schedule, this is my before the season schedule, right? I go through every single game one by one for an episode. Despite predicting they would beat Chicago every other time, I believe, this season, except for this game, I picked the Bulls in this one because the last game of a road trip is hard. It's really hard. You can even look at other ones, right? They had that Minnesota game coming back from that other road trip where, that was right after the in-season tournament. They just got completely waxed, completely destroyed in that game on the way back. In Phoenix, the last game of their West Coast road trip early this season, they got smoked. They just got completely smoked, right? It's just how it goes for these NBA teams. Now, they did have that one where they came home for Minnesota in the middle, where they had 3 on the road and beat Dallas in the last game, and then 2 on the road and beat Oklahoma City. But coming home helps, and being in the Eastern time zone for a lot of that helped. When you have these lengthy road trips, the last game is difficult. Every NBA team's talked about that, and I've said this a lot. The 73-win Warriors' first loss after winning 20 million games in a row to start the season was the last game of an East Coast road trip against the Bucks, who weren't that good that year. It's just hard, and that's not to excuse them. Again, teams that need to win should find a way. There were moments of this game in the first and third quarter where the Pacers clearly had the effort level and energy required to win, but they didn't have it for 48 minutes. And in a game like this, that can be so challenging to win already. When you don't have it, when your style's not working, when the shots aren't falling, it's so easy to hang your head. And the Pacers, a young team, they did it. They hung their heads. They lose. They don't pick up ground in the standings. On a night that the Magic lost and the Cavs lost and the Sixers lost a controversial game and the Heat lost last night, a chance for the Pacers to climb, to keep up, to separate themselves from 7-8, to be right there with 5. They lost. They're still in 6th, it's time for Standings Watch. The theme of this week's going to be tiebreakers because a lot of it got settled today, ironically, thanks to this Bulls game. We'll run through the tiebreakers. We'll keep looking at the teams right around the Pacers, their schedules for the next couple weeks or 4 or 5 games. Because you'll see why I picked 4 or 5. And then we'll do this again next week because next week we'll start talking about matchups and what could matter because everything keeps evolving. I like to do a theme for these standings watches, tiebreakers, expected number of wins. I still think the number for the Pacers is going to be 6 or 7 to avoid playing. We'll see where that goes. But let's do standings watch, see what happened to the teams around the Pacers this week and recently to finish up today's show. But first, this next segment is brought to us by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off of our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who is unbiased on your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking the same thing this week. I hate how people use the word excuse in sports. A reason a team lost a game is not an excuse. It's just that, a reason a team lost. It can sound like an excuse, but an excuse would be qualifying it and saying it doesn't matter or it's not important. It is important. Every game is important. The reason a team lost is a factor in every game. And I don't think it's fair to call everything an excuse. However, I get that fans want their team to win all the time and think things can sound like excuses. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than sports teams and why they lose certain games. It's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If you are thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. And we are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day for your second listen. Check out any team 3 through 10 in the East. We're going to mention all of them a little bit in this segment as the Pacers race for the standings. I guess 2 through 10. The Pacers 6 games behind the Bucks. They're very close to not being able to get the 2 seed, but it's still technically on the table. Let's talk some standings and some tiebreakers for the Pacers because they have 8 games left. Their season will end in 2.5 weeks. Everything matters now. They can't catch the Celtics, who are in first. They can't fall behind 11th place Nets. So let's talk about teams 2 through 10 in the East and their relation to the Pacers, who are now 41-33, 1 game away from a winning record. The Bucks are 46-26. So for the Pacers to catch them, they would have to win at least 5 of their last 8 if the Bucks lose every game. Looking very unlikely the Pacers will catch the Bucks, but the Pacers have the tiebreaker over the Bucks. So if they do find a way to pull it off, the head-to-head tiebreaker, Pacers won 4 out of 5. They would secure that. Very, again, unlikely to matter. The Knicks are in third in the East. They're rolling right now. They've won 3 in a row, 8 out of 10. Mitchell Robinson is back. Perhaps missing OG. They could stumble a bit, but I expect them to finish third in the East. Myself, as I said last week on the show, they're 44-28. Pacers 3 wins behind them and 5 losses behind them. Significant. They've played more games, so that lost column difference is very important. So the Pacers, I guess, could catch the Knicks. Again, that's only a 3-win difference, but it'll be tough to do so. If they do, the Pacers own that head-to-head tiebreaker. They won that season series 2-1. Anunoby did not play in any of those games, but credit to the Pacers for beating a good Knicks team even without Anunoby. Cavs now in 4th. Cavs lost to the Hornets tonight, which is crazy. Cavs have won 3 of their last 10, although Donovan Mitchell reportedly going to return Friday when they play the Sixers. An interesting game for the Pacers specifically. Who do they want to win that game? It's hard to say. Cavs 3.5 games ahead of the Pacers. That's not out of the question to me, especially with how the Cavs are playing of late. And the Pacers took a hit in that tiebreaker today. That sounds crazy to say, but if the Pacers had beaten the Bulls tonight, or last night for you listening, the Pacers would have secured their tiebreaker with the Cavs. I talked about this with Derek Kramer, but the way head-to-head tiebreakers work in the NBA, the first one is head-to-head, and the Pacers are up 2-1 against the Cavs. Even if they lose the last one, it'll be 2-2, so the Cavs don't win the tiebreaker that way. The next trigger is division winner. Are you a division winner? Well, the Bucks are probably going to win the Central, so that's crossed off. The third one is division record if the teams are in the same division, and since the Pacers and Cavs are, that would be the tiebreaker that determines the team with the better record. Had the Pacers beaten the Bulls tonight, the Pacers would have been 12-4 against the Central, and the Cavs are 10-5 right now with the last game for both of these teams against each other. So even if the Pacers lost, their 12-5 would have been better than the Cavs 11-5, and they would have clinched the tiebreaker. So had the Pacers beaten the Bulls, they would have it. Instead, they lost. So now it comes down to the last game between these teams. Again, unlikely to matter, but not out of the question. Pacers play at Cleveland for their second last game of the season, Friday, April 12th. Win and losing could be the difference for that tiebreaker and maybe seeding. So if Pacers had the chance to lock it up today, they no longer did. That one is still hanging in the balance, but Cavs win, Cavs get it. Pacers win, Pacers get it. At least that's easy to understand. Fifth place Magic. The Magic have it. They have a better record than the Pacers right now. The Magic are 42-30. They've lost 2 in a row. They lost to the Warriors last night. So the Pacers could have made up some ground there. They're 2 games back. Let's talk about, this is what I was going to say, the next couple games for these teams the Pacers are close to. The Cavs might make this next week. The Magic's next couple games. Clippers on Friday. That's tough. Clippers won tonight. Then Grizzlies at home, easy. Blazers at home, easy. Pelicans on the road, tough. Then Hornets on the road and Bulls at home. So largely pretty easy. So if you're the Pacers, you'd like to see the Magic lose one of those easy ones, whether that's Portland, Memphis, Charlotte, or even Chicago, because their tough ones are tough. They're not playing great right now. Again, they lost at home, tough offensive night to the Warriors, and they have the tiebreaker over the Pacers. And in a 3-team tiebreaker situation, the Pacers would be in trouble with Orlando because Orlando might win their division. They might win the Southeast Division, and that would be superseding any other tiebreakers in 3 teams. So Pacers probably need to just finish with a better record than the Magic. They're currently 2 games behind them in the standings. Pacers, of course, 41-33 themselves. Right behind them is the Heat, who are 39-33. Which is noteworthy that they're tied in the loss column. So the Heat's next 2 games, they play the Blazers at home on Friday, and they're at Washington Wizards on Sunday. 2 games they should win. So Pacers have done themselves no favors by losing today, although the Heat lost last night at home to the Warriors. That is the most fascinating tiebreaker because it's 1-1, undetermined. The winner of their final game against the Heat on April 7th will determine who wins that tiebreaker. That game is very likely to be extremely important for the 6th seed, especially with the Pacers losing today. The next 6 games for the Heat, which is why I talked about the next 4 or 5 earlier, because 6 games from now is Heat Pacers for the Heat. The Heat's next 5 is Blazers, Wizards, Knicks, Sixers, Rockets. Rockets have won 10 in a row. Sixers will be fighting for seeding potentially with the Heat. Knicks playing very well. So those first 2 are important, but if the Knicks go, let's say, 4-1 in that stretch, the Pacers will have a chance to exceed them even in that last game, but the Pacers really need to do well because the Heat schedule easy for the next couple. Any loss they take significant as the Pacers try to hold them off. 76ers, the Pacers have clinched that tiebreaker. They won that season series 2-1. The Sixers are currently 39-34, so a game and a half back of the Pacers. They've lost 2 straight. And the Sixers' next games, they play at Cleveland Friday, tough. Then Toronto, that's easy. Then OKC, then at Miami, and then they have 2 easy ones with the Grizzlies and Spurs. They could probably go 3-3 in that stretch, but the Pacers are close to me to sealing that they will be ahead of the Sixers, and perhaps Joel Embiid returns and makes this stupid, but there's only 9 games left in the season. I don't think playing Joel Embiid in a 1-game play-in is ideal for any team, but I think the Pacers have a good shot of finishing with the better record than the Sixers, especially because they own that tiebreaker. So yes, they're a game and a half ahead, but really they're more than that because the Sixers have to finish with a better record than the Pacers. The 9th place Bulls have clinched the tiebreaker over the Pacers in a 3-1 season series tonight. And the Hawks, who are still relevant because they can still technically catch the Pacers have that tiebreaker. So the Hawks have to get to – their peak wins is 43. They'd have to get to at least 42 to exceed the Pacers. Not looking good for the Hawks. That's the tiebreaker situation. That is standings watch for the week. Pacers coming home now. This next stretch, LA, Brooklyn, OKC, Miami is their next 5. Winning both the Brooklyn games is a must, and getting one of the LA OKC games, I think, extremely important down the stretch. We'll see how it goes. Pacers in do or die mode. They're out of time to be losing games like the one they lost tonight, but they're done with road trips. They're back home. We'll see how it goes, and we'll cover it all here on the Locked On Pacers podcast tomorrow. Rhett Bauer's going to join us to talk Pacers, their inconsistencies, the rest of their season. Can they get to 6 seed 5, whatever, all sorts of stuff. And we'll dive into some individual players as well as we do here on the Locked On Pacers podcast. And then next week, reviewing the Lakers game, the Nets game, everything, as you know we do. If you want to talk to me more personally about something I said today, at Tony R. East on X or Twitter is the way to do that. The show is on there at Locked On Pacers, or comment down below on YouTube. Thank you guys a ton for listening today. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you tomorrow.